The ACU women's basketball team capped its season off with its first Southland postseason title and its first appearance in the NCAA Division I tournament. I'm Max Preston.
And I'm Grant Boone. We'll look back to the Wildcats' run through the Southland tournament and into the big dance. It's the Julie Goodenough Show right now. Welcome to the season finale of the Julie Goodenough Show from the JMC Network studios on the campus of Abilene Christian University. I'm Grant Boone alongside ACU senior Max Preston and the head coach of the ACU women's basketball team, Julie Goodenough. A lot's happened since our last show, Coach, hasn't it? When your team was headed into the final week of the regular season, you took your team to the Southland tournament. You won 3 games in 3 days to earn the program's first trip to the NCAA tournament. And by the time last week was over, you had legendary Baylor head coach Kim Mulkey doing this.
I wanted them to know where Abilene was, so I play the music, Abilene, Abilene. And then Sheryl Crow has a song about Abilene, doesn't she? Y'all don't know these things. I can tell by the look on your faces.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? Kim Mulkey, she's multi-talented, yes. Well, your 25th season as a college basketball head coach took you to places that you and your team had never been before. What, if you can possibly describe it, have these last 10 days been like for you?
You know, it's just been unreal. And I think the biggest lesson that I'm excited that I learned and our players learned were just, you know, set your sights high and then stay committed to your goals. And even, you know, some days seem really, really hard and you feel like, you know, this is never going to happen for us. If you know, when you're on the brink of like throwing in the towel, like, how are we ever going to accomplish this? Just keep pushing yourself through the days that seem difficult because the blessings are going to be on the other side. And our players really rallied around each other the last couple of weeks of the season and going into the conference tournament. You know, finally you get to the conference tournament and you're like, okay, this is when we really want to play our best basketball. This is our goal, you know, was to jockey ourselves for a good position in this tournament and let's go win the thing. And it's just been so fun to observe just our players, the way they've been committed to each other, just the teamwork. The 2 words I've said the most about our players, I think the last week and a half, is just bragging on their confidence and their poise. And it's been awesome just to watch all of that come to the surface when we really needed it the most.
So before playing in the big dance and celebrating your chance to play against Baylor, your team made an impressive run in the Southland tournament. You took down Central Arkansas, made an incredible comeback against Lamar, and you capped it off with an exciting championship game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. How nice was it to end the tournament holding up that trophy?
Yeah, how about this? Isn't that nice?
Just you know, just a culmination of a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication and commitment on the, you know, really credit our players for all of that. And my staff has been just amazing this season. We added a new coach last spring, and he's just meshed with the current staff. And you know, I couldn't say more about, you know, just our staff and our players and just how much they have invested and sacrificed for our team this season.
Yeah, Associate Head Coach Erica Lambert and Eric DeRue and Drew Cole. It's been a true team effort, hasn't it? And you cap it off with a birthday. Happy birthday today.
Thank you very much.
She began coaching when she was 6, now in her 25th season. Well, we're going to look back at all of these games that got the Wildcats into the big dance and then that historic tilt against Baylor when we come back on the Julie Goodenough Show. Back here on the Julie Goodenough Show. Well, for all the great work that the ACU women's basketball team had done going into the last game of the regular season, the Wildcats still needed a win at home on Senior Day against Incarnate Word to wrap up the number 4 seed and earn a first-round bye in the Southland tournament, and they got both. And then when your old friend and rival, Central Arkansas, won its first-round game over Sam Houston State, on Thursday, it set up a quarterfinal battle with the Sugar Bears, whom you'd already beaten twice this season. You put the game out of reach early, you won the game going away 82-54, and in so doing, you set a Southland Conference tournament record for threes with 16 makes and 35 attempts. You said before the tournament you wanted to know what the record was. What message do you think it sent to your team when you began saying that publicly?
Well, you know, we had 3 days to work out before we even went to the tournament. We didn't know who we were playing. I mean, we worked on some specific scenarios, whether we played Central Arkansas or Sam Houston. And we also worked on things to get ready for Lamar. We knew that for sure was going to be our second game. And I wanted them to have something to focus on because we weren't presenting scouting reports. And we'd shot the ball so well in our Incarnate Word game. And I said, hey, we need to set a record for most threes, makes, attempted, field goal percentage, whatever it is. So I had Zach Carlisle get that information to me. And I didn't know if it would have happened in the first game or not, but we're like, hey, we take a lot of pride in being the best three-point shooting team in the league. We finished the season leading the conference in most three-pointers made and attempted for the season. And I said, we need to go set a new tournament record and just, solidify that we are a great three-point shooting team. And it happened in the first game. We didn't really know that it would because Central traditionally doesn't let us shoot threes. I really thought it would be against a team that maybe, played zone, and we had the potential to possibly see either Nichols or Stephen F. at some point who played zone. And so it just worked that, we did a tremendous job breaking down the defense in that first-round game against Central Arkansas. Every player on the team was shot ready. I think we had 7 or 8 players that contributed to the record. With threes made and threes attempted. And so it was just such a fun game, just a dominant performance on both ends of the floor by our team.
82 points against one of the best defenses in the conference and even the nation.
So that win Friday set up a semifinal game against the top seed Lamar. In that game, the Cardinals led nearly the entire time, but your team pulled off a strong surge in the fourth quarter to come back. 2 big three-pointers by Michaela Mabry and Brianna Wright put you down only one. Then Wright makes a pair of free throws to give you the first lead since the first quarter. By the way, Wright, 16 free throws in the game, a Southland tournament record, and she ultimately helps you get that win in the game. How incredible is it to see your team come through and stun the #1 seed in this tournament?
In the game against Central Arkansas, I really thought teamwork was the biggest way to describe that victory. And then in the Lamar game, it was confidence and poise. And it was so fun to talk in the huddle. And you could just see that everyone we were talking to, they were just hanging on to every word, and they believed everything that we were telling them, like, hey, just hang in there. We've got to stay just a couple of possessions. Within a couple of possessions, we're going to be okay in the end. And we're still down going into the fourth quarter, but we had decreased their margin a little bit in the third quarter. We won the third quarter. We were just a little bit behind, and, our players just, you could tell they believed in what we were telling them. And Lexi Duque and Sarah Williamson were talking during every huddle. And, sometimes as a coach, like you're trying to get your team fired up when they're behind, and they just kind of stare at you like deer in the headlights, and you're like, oh my gosh, like they don't believe what we're saying. But that game, every time out, it's like they're locked in. You got it. Let's go. And the fourth quarter was just amazing. They played with such confidence, and Michaela Mabry hit a couple of tough shots in transition where she could have thought, well, should we pull the ball out? Bree Wright hit a shot in transition that Maddie Miller kicked back to her that I thought was about to be slapped up into the bleachers by a freshman of the year, Maya Crump, and Bree got off right in time and drained it. Maddie Miller was huge in the fourth quarter. She had 2 defensive rebounds and 2 steals. And I attribute our success with the defensive stops because we were getting back in the game, and we took the lead, and we built our lead off transition buckets. And then they came after Bree, and Bree finished it off at the free throw line. But our defensive stops down the stretch were the key to that victory.
Yeah, with comebacks, you think offense, but the comebacks don't happen unless you get stopped.
Yes.
20 of 20 at the free throw line was your team, and Bree was 14 of 14 herself. I've been calling games off and on for 25 years at ASU, including that magical run to the national semifinals in '96 on the D2 level. I can't remember a more thrilling 10 minutes of basketball. And then Sunday happened. In the championship game against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, a spot in the NCAA tournament hanging in the balance. You seemingly had the game under control. You're up 18 at halftime, 24 in the third quarter. The Islanders came storming back. They tied the game with a minute to go. You never gave up the lead. I thought that was huge. And then you get a huge bucket off an assist from Sarah Williamson, the bucket by Lexi Duque. Lexi gets a huge offensive rebound off a missed free throw. Bree gets the 2 clutch free throws. It kept the TV ratings and your blood pressure up, I think. How insane were those last few minutes to beat Corpus for the Southland tournament time?
Yeah, it was a really interesting game. Our players were just hitting on all cylinders in the first half. And it wasn't like at halftime we were like, oh, the game's over. We insisted at halftime, like, hey, they're going to come back at us. They're not done. Be ready. They're going to bring their best game. We're going to get hit in the mouth a couple of times. We've got to sustain. And sure enough, it was like the script flipped.
And they're good at adjustment.
Yeah,
Coach Chadwick.
They are. And, Coach Chadwick, in his post-game interview, went through about 15 different defenses that they threw at us. And sure enough, they did. And that's what they're good at. They keep you, guessing what defense they're in. And it takes you out of your offensive rhythm. And we did a great job of reading that in the first half. And then the second half, we struggled a little bit. I thought we still got the same looks, but they didn't fall. It must have been something about the basket down at that end, because
it might have been.
The first half it was all them or all us, and the second half it was all them, and their shots would just hit every side of the rim and drop through. But down the course of the game, again, I was just so proud of our players. Like, they just played with poise. They were looking us in the eye. During the media timeouts, during breaks. And, you never felt like they were like, oh, my gosh, like, what's going to happen? And we never lost the lead. And I think that was a huge key. They did tie it at one point, but we controlled, from start to finish. And our players just made plays at the end of the game. And I was so proud of, just the way they stayed with it. And we had a lot of adversity in the second half. And, I think we started running out of gas a little bit, and they were sustaining it a little bit better than we were. But, at the end of the day, we finished the game off. And at one point in the game, arguably we probably were headed to like a 21-point win, but a 1-point win was just as sweet. So it didn't really matter. And so it was kind of weird, though. They hit the last shot, and you had to think just a minute like, oh, nope, that wasn't enough. Okay.
Yeah, right, yeah.
We won the game. Yeah. And so it was so exciting. And maybe it was a little bit sweeter the way that we had to just hang on as a team, rather than, winning without much of a challenge. So it was awesome.
It's pretty good.
So first time since 1997, second time ever that in the Southland Conference the men and women's basketball teams have won the Southland and gone to the NCAA tournament. How special is it to not only celebrate your team, but also the men winning the Southland tournament and then going to the NCAA tournament?
It's just unbelievable. And to go along with that, only 3 teams in the entire country had their men and their women win their conference tournaments.
This year, right?
Yeah, this year. It was just phenomenal, just a magical year for both of us. I'm so proud of Joe and his team, and it was really fun to do all of this with them, and just, the whole ACU community, the big country, ACU alums all over the world, we're hearing from all of them, and they're just so proud of both programs, and it was just phenomenal. And, across the country, I think we were a little bit unknown in some parts of the country, but I think people know about us now. And gosh, it was our second year to be eligible for this, and both teams are able to accomplish it. So definitely the future is bright for both men's and women's basketball.
Well, like it did for Coach Golding and the men's team, the Southland tournament title set into motion a wild week of navigating the NCAA tournament and all that entails, beginning with finding out which team you would play in the opening round. Monday afternoon, you learned you could get the #1 team in the nation, the Baylor Lady Bears, on their home floor at the Farrell Center in Waco. It was a renewing of acquaintances for you and Baylor coach Kim Mulkey, whom we heard singing earlier in the show. You coached against each other in the Big 12, and you were with Oklahoma State. Take me through these 3 or 4 days leading up to the game and the excitement of drawing the best team in the nation.
Well, there was a little bit of a hiccup on Monday.
Yes.
That took a little bit of the excitement away. Someone at ESPN released the brackets early, and then it forced us to move our selection show from 6 to 4, and so we weren't able to get, all the fans in there that wanted to come. They were still at work, and but it didn't take away from the fact that we're going to our first NCAA tournament ever. Our team obviously was there. Lots of support staff from ACU were there, and it was just fun to see our name flash up on the board. And the women's bracket is created completely different than the men's. The first or the top 8 and oftentimes first 16 seeds or 16 teams are matched up with teams geographically. And it kind of stinks for us because we're so close to Baylor. We may face Baylor 5 more times before we face someone else, because they're going to continue their domination of the Big 12 and be one of the top, I think, 5 teams in the country for a long time, as long as Coach Mulkey's there. But for our first appearance in the NCAA tournament, it could not have worked out better for our fans. We had such a great crowd of fans there. They were, busting the seams at the Texas Sports Hall of Fame at the pregame party. Yeah. And there were like 3 or 4 buses that bus students from ACU to our game. When our players came out for the first time, one whole quadrant of the arena was purple with, fatheads of our players, and the place just erupted for our team. It was just kind of rivaled that SMU the crowd that we had several years ago for the WNIT, but I think for the fan experience, it couldn't have worked out better for us to play at Waco and play against Baylor, even though they're the #1 team in the country and I believe the next national champions.
Yes.
But it was just a great experience overall, I think, for our program and just for the ACU family in general.
Yeah, so when you actually took on the Bears in the game Saturday, they proved to be the #1 team in the nation. They get off to a hot start in the game and ultimately win. But there were several great moments in that game and before that game. Sarah Williamson, senior, when she checks out, she gets a standing ovation from the crowd. Before the game, you and Mulkey meet up, have a picture-perfect embrace before the game. And then fan favorite, Lexi Kerrigan, she comes off the bench and scores 10 points. So from your point of view, how special and just how great was this atmosphere in the first ever tournament game?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, I don't know what could have been different. Obviously we were wanting to hit a few more shots, knock down a few more threes. Maybe we feel a little bit better about our score, but I mean, it's the best team in America. It's like ACU football matching up with Alabama.
Yeah.
That's the perspective that we hope that our fans have about that. And I thought it was just incredible the way our players went out and they played fearlessly. And we talk about controlling the controllables all the time, and especially going into this game, like, we can't help it that they're 6'6", 6'7". I mean, our scout team's not even that big. There's no way we can prepare you for what you're about to match up with. I thought the telling tale was when our captains met at half court, and their captains were fist bumping down to our players, and ours were fist bumping up, and you're like, that's a good picture right there of what this is going to be like. And our strategy, you can't take everything away, but we had defensive game plan of scenarios of double teaming and triple teaming their post players. And, there were times they basically played keep away over our heads and there was nothing we could do. But it gave up 3-point shots on the perimeter, which is not their strength. But, a national championship caliber team, they're going to hit open shots. And so they hit some threes. But overall, I thought our team played hard. They did the best that they could in that situation. They followed through the game plan as well as they could have. I know that Sarah would say this if she was here, but she was so appreciative of the response of the crowd. It was a standing ovation of about 1,000 fans there to celebrate her career here at ACU when we took her out. And as you mentioned, Lexi Kerrigan, she went to town. She did a phenomenal job, and she was the only player we had that could match up even close to size-wise of their players, and she took full advantage of that and just had a tremendous outing. But I thought our players did a really good job. I mean, it was a daunting task, and we knew that going in. And, for the women, you play on home courts. It's not even a neutral court. And so, they had all the fans are playing where they practice every single day, and they played tremendously. But our team did an amazing job. Really, really proud of their effort. And I think that they were really locked in, and they controlled what they could control.
Yes.
And it was awesome, like the men being on CBS. You were on ESPN2. You had a national audience watching Abilene Christian, and seeing that name up there for a couple hours was special. What a week and a half it was for your team. Congratulations. Thank you on behalf of ACU alumni and fans for what you did in representing Abilene Christian. It was a week to remember for sure. When we come back, we'll recap this historic season, and we'll look ahead to next year on the Julie Goodenough Show. Wrapping things up here on the Julie Goodenough Show for the 2018-19 season. Coach, your 25th season as a college basketball head coach, 7th at ACU is in the books. You finished 23-10. How about this? 4 20-plus win seasons for you now, including 3 out of 6 at the Division I level. Incredible. The loss to Baylor, of course, meant the final game for your only senior, Sarah Williamson, who leaves as the winningest player in the Division I era at ASU, 88 victories for Sarah that she was a part of. How would you summarize this entire season and what Sarah specifically has meant?
Just to talk about Sarah for a minute, for 2 seasons, she was like our 6th or 7th man, and she played an important role on the first 2 conference championship teams that we had. And then last year, she was expected to lead our team along with a couple of seniors. She was our 1 junior. We had 2 seniors, and we were like, hey, it's y'all's turn. And they had never had to step up and be the star players or be the leaders of our team. And we asked Sarah to do that last year, and she did a nice job of that. And then coming in this season, her one word to focus on this year was finale. And I think that she really carried an urgency with her throughout the course of the season. And we really saw that when we hopped into 2019, that like she was aware that, hey, I just have a matter of weeks left in my career being a college basketball player, and she just did a tremendous job of always putting that in front of her team, like, hey, you know, we've got to win this conference game. Hey, we want to be in a good spot in the conference tournament. We're trying to win a championship. And, you know, she was a voice in the locker room a lot for our team this year. And she was not a captain, but as a senior, she was viewed as a leader, and she stepped up and I think did a nice job filling the leadership role. And it was the best year of basketball, her on-court performance, that she had had in her entire career. And that's what you want for all of your players,
sure,
for them to finish out strong and be, you know, a major contributor. She made the all-tournament team at the conference tournament, just a great way for her to cap off her senior season. And, you know, for us, for this year, way back in the fall, we were picked to finish 6th in the conference. And so I think that we exceeded expectations that people outside of our locker room had for our program, and that's always special. You know, if you're picked number 1, you kind of have a target on your back all year long, and we were just kind of fighting and clawing to prove ourselves all year, and that was a really fun role for us to be in as well. And of course, as a coach, you know, you'd love to talk about the underdog role, and so it was really fun just, you know, saying, hey, we're not even supposed to beat this team, let's go get them tonight. And so what a fun year, and a year where we were able to beat Central Arkansas 3 times. That no one does that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be pretty rare. We beat Corpus Christi 3 times, and that was pretty rare as well. And so, and then
and you beat Lamar.
And we beat Lamar when it counted the most,
yes,
in the semifinal game, and
yes,
they had just such a tremendous season. And you know, they had the freshman of the year, the player of the year, the defensive player of the year, who, you know, led the country in steals, and their team led the country in steals. It was just such a tremendous program, and so that was a huge victory for our program, just to see where we were at the end of the season, that we were able to pull it together and beat Lamar. So just a magical year. I mean, it's hard to put into words, and it's really hard for me to believe that it's over too. You get so engrossed in it.
Yes.
And I was telling my husband last night, well, tomorrow's like a regular day at work, you know, and he's like, well, yeah, for me too, you know, but I'm not thinking about scouting report, I'm not thinking about what we need to do in practice, and it's like, it's over, you know, and it's been so fun, and just a magical season that we will remember for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. So after capturing the first Southland postseason title and the team's first ever trip to the NCAA Division I tournament, what's next for this program during the offseason and the next campaign?
So we graduate Sarah, and we add Anna McLeod, who's been with us all year, and
Yes.
She's going to be a fan favorite. She is an awesome, awesome young lady, and she fits perfectly into our style of play. She broke her hearts a couple of years ago and went to a different school and then cycled back around, and so we're really excited about her. And so with the great season that we had this year, and we really don't change a whole lot, the future is bright for our program. And I think that the message that we're going to start talking about in off-season and in the summer is we do not want to be a 16 seed.
Yes.
You want to challenge the NCAA committee to have a conversation about you. Even though regionally we will still be closest to Baylor, who will be more than likely a number 1 seed next year, we do not want to be a 16 seed. So it was great this year. We win the tournament, we go to the NCAA tournament, but to have a real chance to do something special and win a game, you know, move on to the second round. You cannot be a 16 seed. You can't even be a 15 seed in the women's game, because you're going to play on someone's home court in front of, you know, a sellout crowd. And so that's a conversation we want to have with our team. Like, been there, done that. That was fun, but we don't want to be a 16 or even a 15 seed next year. And so that's really the message that we'll take into off season in the summer.
These don't get old, do they? We may have to build a new mantle, but
Yeah.
Coach, 6 seasons in Division I in the Southland Conference. You have 3 of these. 2 regular season trophies, and now the tournament trophy. You got to cut down the nets in Katy. It was great. Thanks for all you did for a great season
Appreciate
on the
it.
show.
Yeah.
Max, great job by you and the entire staff of the Optimist. I know it was a season we will never forget. And the Wildcats now turn their attention to 2019 and 20, and we'll be with you next year for another season of the Julie Goodenough Show. Thanks to our producer, Hutton Harris, and all the ACU students who contributed to the show this year. For Max and for the coach, I'm Grant Boone. Thanks for watching the Julie Goodenough Show. We will see you next year.